Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have had a wonderful day so far. I have for you a thorough and in-depth breakdown of everything you need to know relating to chip strategy and just the general landscape of FPL at the moment. There are many parts I've considered to this chip strategy, all of which are included in this video and build on top of each other. Before we get into the video, and of course I will solve your problems when it comes to benching dilemmas, I would just like to say thank you. You may notice that the starting screen is slightly different. Usually it's the team, but today it's a picture of myself with Holly, Kelly, and Harry over on the official FPL show. Last week, I got an email from a Premier League producer who invited me to come on, and I would say it went rather well. Now, this show will also be on Sky Sports this evening, and obviously, when you're in the UK, you watch Sky Sports a lot if you watch sports, and the fact that my face is going to be on there is pretty cool. Now, if one of you maybe didn't press that like button one more time, or one of you didn't press that subscribe button when you did, maybe the algo wouldn't have pushed it to the particular producer and I wouldn't have been on, but I am. So for your support, I am very grateful, and I just wanted to express that. Without anything else needing to be said, let's hop into what will be, in my opinion, the most important video of the season thus far. A prerequisite of sorts for the rest of the content which is to follow in this video, and as alluded to in the introduction, this video is very much done in a story-like manner where every little bit builds on the next bit and is essential to understand the whole. You may have a chip strategy which you are fairly locked on, and I can completely appreciate that, but you may just be missing one viewpoint or one little bit of information which could entirely change that. And given the magnitude of this decision, I think having all of the information is absolutely vital. And that's why this video is out slightly later. I really wanted to make sure that I had everything covered. So I do think I have everything covered. And as such, even if you aren't going to watch the entire video or the entire chip strategy section, I would recommend just taking a glance at each and every section. And it will, of course, be chaptered to ensure that you don't miss out on anything at all. Because like I said, this one decision, what you're going to do now, will really form the rest of your season. I will start with something that I feel just needs to be said to ensure that no one makes a quote-unquote mistake. And then we will get into the real exciting part of the video. When it comes to Everton players, as I expressed in everything you need to know, I was warming to them quite significantly. Not just Pickford, who I'd already bought, but Mikalenko, even Tarkowski. I was even willing to consider a Decore punt, Iliman Ndiaye. But now, with how the landscape shifted, and the fact that a lot of us don't have many transfers, or at a bare minimum, we're going to have to use a lot in the upcoming weeks, and not just weeks, but in the immediate term, we talk a lot about efficiency of transfers on this channel, and I don't think this would be the most efficient use. Even Pickford, I think you could argue, may not be the most efficient use of a transfer this week, especially if you're not bullish on Everton and you're fairly on the fence about them. So unless you have super strong conviction that Iliman Ndiaye is going to do fantastically well this week, you can see Everton getting a clean sheet and Tarkowski getting quite a few bonus points and maybe even a goal or assist to go alongside it. I really would just avoid going for Everton assets, whilst somewhat attractive this week, and prioritize the overall chip strategy through, potentially using transfers and saving them for the assistant managers, transfers down the line, or even just structuring your squad slightly better, allowing you to facilitate the better assets and getting just cash out for the assistant manager, should you wish to use it. This is the commencement of the analysis in relation to strategy 1, and the 3 strategies are something that I shall show you in a moment. You could play the assistant manager chip this week on a manager who doesn't have a double game week. Let's say you're really bullish on Fabian Hurtzler away at Nottingham Forest. I think he could do quite well. And you're adamant that they're going to win. Well, if they win, he gets 20 points. And it's unlikely that either Slot or Moyes hits 20 points this game week, right? So you go there. It's definitely not probable. So you go there and it pays off, and well done. You would have soared in rank as a result, on the assumption the rest of the team does okay, and triple captain Salah, which will still be an option for some, as I'll show you, doesn't go absolutely parabolic, right? You would have done wonderful, okay? And that's fine. But for most of you, that is something that you're not confident in, just in relation to Fabian Hurtzler doing that or anyone else doing that, and in general, you think it's too much of a risk. I can completely understand. So then let's assume you go for Arne Slot or David Moyes. Why do I prefer David Moyes significantly more than Arne Slot? Firstly, my own philosophy on the game, and that will vary from person to person, right? Every single one of you watching this will have a slightly different philosophy on how the game should be played. I personally obviously like to make the optimal move in every situation, but I am willing to accept a little bit more risk for disproportionate upside whilst not over leveraging myself, and I think Moyes satisfies that condition. Then you take the current ultra competitive state of the Premier League, meaning that most teams can actually beat most teams, and Everton getting a result against Liverpool isn't so far out of the window, especially in comparison to when, I don't know, let's say the 15th place side would play the first place side a few years ago. You couldn't imagine City really slipping up, or at least it's very difficult to do so, especially past January. But now, with the quality that pretty much everyone has, it's quite viable for someone to get a victory or even a draw in this position. So not only do you not access the upside, but the downside, I think, is operating as a slightly higher probability than it would have done in the Premier League era, even a few years gone by. The second reason is you are likely to have one less doubler if you go for Arne Slot, because at least this way you can go triple Liverpool players-wise, however many Everton, on the assumption it's not a triple up, and I haven't seen a single team with triple Everton yet. There's probably some floating around, but I'm going to speak about most people here. And as such, you'll have triple Liverpool, Moyes, and an Everton player, or even two Everton players, so 5 or 6 doublers. But if you have Slot, you cap yourself, because realistically, you're not going triple Everton. You'll have 2 Liverpool players, Slot and Pickford, right? Just as an example. That's 4, and you're not really going past that. So to lose a doubler, when they have a double-double, for me, it just makes no sense. Especially when one of the potential sales I'm seeing at quite a high frequency is Cody Gakpo. Now, I really dislike this, and we'll come on to why, because he has his own section partially later down the line, but I really don't like it, because you are going to have to get the funds right for Arne Slot, 1.5 million, and even if you have it, you're going to have to free up the slot. Are you going to get the slot from Cody Gakpo? I don't like it. Are you going to get the slot from Trent Alexander-Arnold? I'm more inclined, but I still don't like it. So that's the third reason. And fourthly, it will require free transfers. You still got to take Trent out, and you almost definitely have to move Arne Slot in 26 as well, because do you really want him for Manchester City away? No, probably not, especially when there's no table bonus accessible to yourself, right? So that's another transfer there. You might have to take hits. You may not be as optimized for 25 as a result of going for Slot now. I personally don't like it. Yeah, sure, you're going to have to make transfers elsewhere, but at least there's the upside on offer, I think, to pay it back with huge interest, whereas I'm not so sure that going for Arne Slot does that, right? Now, I say but for a reason. They are the best team in the country, and they have been for the entirety of the season, pretty much. They are the favourites against Bournemouth, even though it's away, and even though Bournemouth have been in such brilliant form and boast so many impressive things about themselves, not just their players, but also their coach. And likewise, they're the favourites when they go away to Everton. Yes, it's the last derby at Goodison Park. Yes, going to Goodison Park under the lights with the atmosphere pumping is going to be very difficult. It would be for anyone. But they're still the best team in the country and have absolute quality in their ranks. So the floor for him is much higher than it would be for Moyes. But like I said earlier, in this ultra-competitive Premier League, where everyone's so good, where the games are away, where there's other conditions present, like the opposition's form, I just wonder that your floor might be slightly lower than you think, just because of all of these variables. And there's not the upside to match it, right? At least if you're going to be able to go down further, you should be able to go up further. And I don't think that's a potential with Arne Slot. Do I realistically see Liverpool absolutely blowing Everton or Bournemouth away, like 5-6-0? Probably not. Which then means we should move on to David Moyes. Now, I'm not in love with David Moyes as an option. I do not think it's the best thing since sliced bread. However, he has one game where table bonus is accessible to himself, and we'll come on to some projections and why that's just so beneficial when it comes to outcomes. And the other thing is he's got Leicester at home. I think that is one of the better fixtures that you can have. I have respect for Leicester. I respect for their attack, respect for their coach. But personally, I see Everton go into that game as favourites, as I imagine the bookies will as well. And usually that's a okay indicator. I'm not quite as high on the market odds as other people, but still I respect it, and I think it's a good indicator to an extent. And if they can do well in that game, there's no guarantee that Liverpool beat Bournemouth. And if they slip up once, there's a lot of points lost in proportion to what he could gain in general because of the lack of upside, right? So if Everton even walk away with a 2-1 win there and you get 8 points, I think that's really solid as a start for Everton. And that is not an improbable outcome. So given that Moyes can access the table bonus, I personally prefer to go for him, not just for that, but for also all of the other reasons discussed, and the fact that I don't like Arne Slot so much, as opposed to I'm just in love with David Moyes. Now, why? Why is this completely different style of video being produced in the first place? Well, we got the announcement from Arsenal, Aston Villa, Liverpool, Fulham, and Spurs that should they blank in 29, resultant of what happens in the EFL Cup in a few days, they are going to double in 25. So roughly, and I show this on another slide, but for now, all you need to understand is if that Liverpool go through against Spurs, Aston Villa and Liverpool will double in double game week 25. They will, of course, have the fixture against each other at Villa Park, and then Aston Villa will also have Ipswich at home, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, and Liverpool will double with Wolves at home. 2 very good fixtures to have. For this particular strategy, as I expressed, there are three. I'm going to be playing preferences and probabilities. My preference that Liverpool go through because it makes life a lot easier. And simultaneously, it's also the most probable outcome given there are about 62% to go through in the tie. We can assume that it's a Liverpool-Newcastle final as well and Newcastle get through because that's the most probable outcome as well. And then we'll divert and look at other strategies. Does Slot's value increase now that he has a double-double? It's not just the one against Everton and Bournemouth. Of course, yes. In isolation, absolutely, right? Got an extra game next week. However, in terms of the opportunity cost compared to the combination of Moyes and Emery, I don't think that necessarily it means that he actually improves. I think he gets worse because now the upside that we had in, let's say, 24 compared to Arne Slot is doubled because we get to do it again. Naturally, the downside increases as well. I'm completely appreciative of that, especially because Liverpool versus Wolves is the best fixture that they will have, and it's in the second double game week. But again, given my philosophy on the game, and given the ultra-competitive state of the Premier League and how much I respect pretty much all the teams in the league, well, you've got to respect them, right? But rate them in terms of quality. I think the gap is so big when, considering it's all at home for Villa and Everton, I would be going for Arne Slot. And I also talked about the hidden cost in hidden cost as a concept in previous videos, and I would say that applies here. I was on Green Arrow yesterday, and the wonderful Fergie likes to describe it as the lay of the land, to look at the lay of the land. So that's what we shall do now. On the left-hand side is what I'm initially proposing with this strategy. Everton at home to Leicester, at home to Liverpool, and the Villa at home to Ipswich, and at home to Liverpool. In those first 4 games, and you will of course have another one in game week 26 for the assistant manager, 2 times table bonus, and 2 times quite good fixtures at home. Liverpool, 0 table bonus, 3 tough away games, and a fixture for Wolves at home, which I quite like. So what we should really do, and what I do at times to make decisions, is I will project how an asset is going to do or what the score is going to be, and then I will take things from there. So first, before we do that, let's just assess Unai Emery's prospects, and then we can do the rest, right? Just to give you something to bounce some ideas off, just some theory. Aston Villa realistically should be Ipswich. And the other thing about that is they've been quite decent in the league when they haven't had Champions League midweek, and they won't. Because they got through into the top 8, they don't need a playoff, and they'll be well rested for that Ipswich game. I've looked at the schedule, right? That's a big plus. That is a big, big plus. And I spoke to a friend about this. I don't want to speak about it too much whilst he was at the club, but I don't think John Duran was in any way good for Ollie Watkins. People will talk about, oh, they can push each other, but people are different, right? Not everyone responds in the same way. And I think Ollie Watkins now could really thrive. So, given that, I'm even more bullish on Aston Villa doing well. So given I'm quite happy with Unai Emery, let's just assess what could happen in these games. Well, you're going to assume, or have to assume if you're betting on Moyes, that Everton beat Leicester. But even if they draw, it's not the end of the world on the assumption that one of Everton versus Liverpool or Aston Villa versus Liverpool ends in a draw. Because it is such a big swing. Let's say one of those games ends in a draw, right? And we'll just call it a 2-2 draw, argument's sake. That is a 10-pointer on the assumption you go for the left-hand side. And that is a 2-pointer if you go for Arne Slot. That's an 8-point swing. Liverpool then, let's say they beat Wolves like 3-0. Okay, they get 11 points. And again, Everton versus Leicester is like a 2-2 draw. That's a 9-point swing. So even though you haven't won a single game in that period, you're still about even. Now, yes, it's less probable to have an outcome where Everton draw against Liverpool or Aston Villa draw against Liverpool because Liverpool are the favourites. But it's not impossible, or it's not even close to it. And considering the quality of the sides, I think this is going to really happen. And then you have to warrant the upside as well, right? Why can't Villa beat Liverpool? They could. And if Liverpool go in a slump, you almost get your jabs in very quickly, and you could just continuously profit of their demise in form. And then it's not just that, it's all the reasons I discussed with Arne Slot initially. So for me, personally, I much prefer utilizing transfers, attacking the upside, because this is where there's most available points, not in players, but in the managers, and going Moyes to Emery for this strategy. And now let's move on. So those were strategies 1 and 2, essentially. You could say, you could go Moyes, Emery, and then whoever you want in 26, or slot, and then whoever you want in 26. 26 is a non-issue at the moment. People like me are probably going to go Guardiola if the table bonus is present, or Ruud van Nistelrooy. Some other people might look at what's the most optimal fixture for one particular team, even if it's without table bonus, and go there. But either way, it's a non-issue, and we don't really need to think about it too much at the moment. You can deal with it in 26. Now, there is another assistant manager strategy within these game weeks, which we're going to come on to after I show you the implications of that. But before that, I would like to touch on strategy 3, which I don't think is being spoken about well, it's barely being spoken about, but I think it's really underrated and warrants consideration. Triple captain double game week 24 and assistant manager double game week 25 and 27. Let me set up the comparison for you. You essentially get either, and I'm just going to assume you go for the first strategy, Moyes for double game week 24 and however many points he gets there versus the additional points you get from Salah triple captain. But then in 27, obviously like the assistant manager's higher upside, right? And also has got a higher floor. But then in 27, you've still got that game left over for the assistant manager to at least compensate and hopefully exceed what you would have lost, or maybe just extend the lead that you would have had in 24. And naturally, the triple captain will have to be played on the other side. But there is the potential that we only have one more double game week, and that is 33. So you set up the wildcard and then the bench boost, which means that you'd have to be playing the triple captain in a single game week. So what is more valuable to you? Moyes plus triple captain in a single game week, or Salah in the double game week, this double game week, without Moyes, and then the assistant manager in a single game week? Are you losing one fixture for the assistant manager? Yes. But are you getting an extra fixture to triple captain? Yes. So you've got to weigh that up and see what you think will be the highest outcome. And I really think you should consider the strategy. I haven't decided what I'm going to do. I will post it. I'm more inclined to go strategy 1 at the moment, but this is a really good strategy, I think. And it's I prefer this far more to going slot, for example. Like I'll either be going Moyes, Emery, and then whoever, or I'll be doing this strategy. I think there's a lot of upside to it. And then one thing we'll touch on is in Game Week 27, there's actually a few decent table bonus opportunities. Glasner, Pereira, Moyes, Ange, Howe, all of these guys, right? Now, naturally, if you don't share the same philosophy as me, you can go for one of the safer picks. Nothing wrong with that. Everyone's different. But there's also a lot of upside in 27, even though you get one less fixture, right? Because you're still only getting 3 times table bonus in the combination of 24 to 26, whereas in strategy 3, you are also going to get 3 times table bonus, albeit just with one less fixture, but naturally that has less upside, so people are going to gain less than they could if it was another table bonus. That's to sum that up. Now let's go into what my team looks like with strategy 1, and I will show you that it's actually not so different from my prior strategy, and it allows the team to still stay very healthy. I must say I am thoroughly enjoying this video, and this game week should be a lot of fun, and this FPL from now on, for at least the next few weeks, should be a lot of fun. This is what my team looks like in Game Week 25. For those of you who watched my team selection yesterday, you would roughly remember what my team looked like, and you will see it's not so different. So what is my plan in Game Week 25? Well, Moyes to Emery with 1 free transfer, and then they're making me sell Phil Foden. I tried and I tried and I tried. I resisted pretty much every urge to sell him. He did so well for me, but finally, with the last jab, they got me. So to free up the funds to go Wissa to Watkins, I would have to move Foden out. Brain freeze moment. But this shows you how important I think it is to have that triple Liverpool and Cody Gakpo. I've seen a lot of people consider just going Gakpo out to Watkins. I'm willing to sell Foden, and you know how much I love Foden as an asset, to facilitate Watkins whilst coexisting with Cody Gakpo, because I have no interest, not a single bit of interest in selling Cody Gakpo for Wolves at home. And then Villa away is cool, but Wolves at home, not a single bit of interest. And the team looks good, right? Like the team does look really strong. Yes, I'll have to take a -4, but we're going to come on to hits in this period later in this video. I could potentially not take a -4 if I just decided not to get Ollie Watkins, but personally, for the reasons discussed earlier, John Duran leaving, the fixtures, the fact that they will be well rested for both the Ipswich and Chelsea game, the Chelsea game follows after, and the Liverpool game will be in the middle, I think he'll be all right. And I think he could do quite well. And you'll see the benefits to owning him down the line as well. Now, I've paired Game Week 26 and 27 together in this slide. Why? Well, Game Week 26, I did nothing but Unai Emery to Guardiola. The team looked the same, so I thought no point showing you that. And in this game week, Burgess to Munoz. And again, for those of you who remember my team selection, it was the same transfer in the team selection video in Game Week 27, right? Even though the structure of the transfers is largely the same. I was going to take out Gordon, right, and bring in a midfielder, and then utilize transfers on the manager. This time around, I'm just making one more forward transfer, slight tweak to the squad, but remember, Whistle was going to be sold anyway in 28, so there's really not that much of a difference there, and it shows you that within what we deem to be the optimal strategy, again, get on to all of the other chips and how they interact with each other, it's still very solid. Game Week 28 is probably where there's the biggest difference, and it's not even that much of a difference. I was going to bring in Jean-Philippe Mateta in my old plan, but now that I have Ollie Watkins and he's got significant utility past 29, I'm keeping him. Gakpo's got Southampton at home, better fixture, so I'll keep him. If he has poor expected minutes by the time, I can, of course, make the move. I'm going to make it anyway, as you will see. And then game week 29, for those of you who are considering it, here it is yet again, the huge upside free hit. Because remember, think about my team prior. No Guardiola, no Foden, no Wood, no Cunha, no Semenyo, no Kluivert, no Bruno, no De Ligt, no Sells, no Emery. I'm getting 11 fresh players. 11 players that I find preferable for this game week and ones that I would really like. Whereas if I don't read it in this week, it's going to be really tough to have anywhere close to an optimal team. I'll have to be taking all of these guys on and some. And either side of the fixtures, I'll have to sell my players that I would like to keep. So again, I think it's so optimal now to go free at 29. And I will discuss this when we get to the other chip strategy bit. Finally, game week 30. Now, there was no real need for me to show 31 and 32. Not too much changed. Obviously, 33 is the big double. But as you can see, double Villa, triple Palace, given the moves I made, Gakpo to Mateta for his good fixture, triple Newcastle. I've already got the doublers. I've already got most of the doublers in that I'll need. And yeah, fine, it might be a bigger double game week, but that's fine because then I'll have three transfers, 31, 32, 33, to readjust and then bench boost. And even if I didn't, I can just wildcard and then bench boost all the same. And let's just say I have the triple captain chip and I'm still holding it. I'll just use it down the line. Okay, no problem. So the team looks really strong. And even with this change in strategy, even with using the assistant manager chip now, for those of you who are concerned about it, your teams aren't going to be so different to mine. Yeah, obviously there'll be differences. But structurally, it won't be a million miles off, especially as the chip strategy converges. And as such, I'm just showing you that it's very plausible to use the assistant manager chip now. And I quite literally have no real problems down the line. I promise you, I will discuss everything you need to know. So let us assess the other side of the coin. And whilst improbable, still possible for both Arsenal and Spurs to have a double game week, alongside Fulham should Spurs double as well. Now, what are the conditions that need to be met for this to occur? Well, Arsenal will need to progress to the final, and if they do, they will have a double game week of Leicester away and Chelsea at home. Quite tasty, if you're an Arsenal asset, which we'll come on to as to why that could be a potential challenge. And then if Spurs are to progress against Liverpool, that would mean that Liverpool and Aston Villa don't double, so their value in the short term declines significantly, and it would mean that Spurs double, Man United at home and Fulham away, and then Fulham double, Nottingham Forest at home and Tottenham at home. Now, in this case, let's just say, for example, you're going to go with the popular strategy of using the assistant manager, and you're not going to use it on Arnie Slot, which I think it's about 50-50 between Slot and Moyes at the moment, roughly from the polls I've seen. And then let's just say you're on the Moyes side. Instead of moving into Unai Emery, because of course he will not double now, you move into one of Marco Silva or Ange Postecoglou. Both will be able to access the table bonus, just in different fixtures. Fulham will be the Nottingham Forest one, obviously, and then Spurs will be the Fulham one. Now, I just showed you what the plan looked like if I were to take out Foden and Wissa. And if I planned it as well. If I were to take out, well, if Spurs and Fulham were to double, I would again be taking out Foden and Wissa, and I would be replacing them with Richarlison and Kulusevski. Maybe my mind changes and I fancy backing Fulham instead, and I'm not too keen on Spurs. Maybe I split it and I go Kulusevski and Raul. All of them, however, roughly end up leading to the same path. So if they do double, it's not the end of the world. I wouldn't say it's preferable, but it's not the end of the world. And you can kind of go and plan that with your team as well, just taking some of the ideas that I have. Liverpool doubling would be easier, though. I think it'd be a lot easier. I'd say more preferable, at least, in terms of how pretty the squad would look, but it wouldn't cause too much disruption to the transfers you would need to make, the type of transfer you need to make. However, Arsenal, I look at that Arsenal double game week, and I would want triple of their players. Like, I fancy them beating Leicester away, naturally, one of the best teams in the league. And we're not, as a Chelsea, we're not that good at the moment, and we're not particularly good in these big games. At least Palmer's not probably as effective as you would like. And just with the way we're currently playing, and I'm not going to go into too much football analysis today, because this is more of a strategy video, and I think that's more important, hence why the analysis is so surface level and just a few comments as opposed to usual. I think they'd beat us. And I'd be quite confident in saying they'd beat us, which would mean that, yeah, we've all got Gabriel pretty much, and I would love that. But I would probably like another defensive asset, and I would probably like one of the forward assets, especially if I fancy gambling on Kai. And you know the thing about Kai? He would love to score against us at the Emirates, so I wouldn't even mind going there. So that makes it a lot harder. And as you can see down below, it would mean passing up Watkins, even if Liverpool were to progress. Because you could get an Arsenal-Liverpool final, which would mean that Watkins and Arsenal would have a double game week. So if to facilitate Arsenal, maybe you pass up Watkins, maybe you sell Isak, because he's your route into like Havertz or something, or just to free up some cash to get more expensive defensive assets. You just avoid them entirely if they double, but other people are going to have them. Hugely increases downside. Maybe you change your assistant manager's plan because you were initially going to go I don't know, Emery and then he doesn't get through, or, now all of a sudden you prefer Arteta, or maybe you have to take hits to facilitate all of this, etc., etc., etc. So many variables at play. And as such, if they do double, I would like to think you take a somewhat conservative approach this week, especially when it comes to selling your Liverpool players, so you have transfers in the bank. That's the good thing about going Moyes. As long as you got 0.5 in the bank, there's no transfer being used this week. You can roll and then reassess. Obviously, we're not going to know the outcomes of these EFL games until Game Week 25, or before the Game Week 25 deadline, but certainly after the Game Week 24 one. So that's this strategy covered. However, this is primarily a chip strategy video, so we can't just talk about the assistant manager and a bit about the triple captain. We have to talk about the rest. The triple captain is the least important chip because it's the least powerful chip. Like the squad player, he's very useful, but he's not the star and thus shouldn't be platformed in the same way. If we have to play it in a single game week, because of the projections I've spoken about, where the only other double after 25, is going to be 33, then so be it. If you really think that the assistant manager is going to do so well in 24, or at least outscore the combination of strategy 3, which I showed you, play in a single game week. It's not the end of the world. Haaland did so well in game week 2. Why can't you do the same, right? And you're probably going to use it on a midfielder, realistically. And at least the ceiling's higher. Like Haaland had to score a hat-trick to get 17 points. Salah could score a brace on the assumption they keep a clean sheet. He'll get 16 for one less goal. And one goal is a big deal, especially if you just look at the tallies and compare it as a percentage. It's a big deal. So, that should be okay if you had to use it down the line, if you're so bullish on using the assistant manager chip now and the projections for as they currently are. And I'm using Ben Crellins and James from Planet FPL's projections. The wildcard and bench boost, as discussed with the projections, potentially just one big double game week in 33, wildcard prior to it, and you can set up the bench boost. You know what? Maybe you can bench boost a somewhat optimal squad, and what you actually think about doing is using the wildcard later down the line as a really aggressive play when pretty much no one will have it, especially because 34 is going to be slightly awkward with a few blanks, albeit probably less than we initially anticipated. Again, absolutely fine. And then the free hit. We spoke about blank game week 29 when we were looking at the plan of my teams. Looked so optimal for the reasons that were discussed in the previous video. But a quick summary, the upside in the game week compared to the upside in 34, not just due to the volume of fixtures, which are going to be blanks, but also the types of fixtures and who's playing who, and the assets that you won't own. Simultaneously, you get to keep all of the good assets who have good fixtures either side of it and don't have to sell them, including Newcastle and Palace, who will have huge utility either side of the double, also either side of the blank. So that's that. Now, before we exit chip strategy, I just wanted to come back here. Have a look at that bottom section. Take that bottom section and figure out roughly what you think the points could be for each of those games. That's what I did prior to this, and it allowed me to justify to myself, at least, why I'm probably going to go for Moyes Emery if I am to choose strategy 1 over strategy 3. Like I said, it's primarily a chip strategy video. I'll do a little bit of football analysis. As I spoke about in everything you need to know, if there was one team in the world right now I would want to take to the vitality to beat Bournemouth, I would choose Liverpool. Arne Slot's flexibility within his tactics certainly helps. But what helps even more so is the players he has. Virgil van Dijk's press resistance against that high press. Trent's passing range against that high press. One of the best ways to play against the high press is to play over it. Likewise, Van Dijk's diagonals against the high press and over that high press. Gravenberch and McAllister being so comfortable receiving in the pivot compared to most players against that high press. And that high press really is Bournemouth's biggest creative weapon, I would say. Gravenberch in transitions, carrying. Bosley in transitions, carrying. The front three in transitions. They've got enough. They've got more than enough to hit Bournemouth and hit them hard. So this isn't just going to be necessarily such a close game because you have to respect the quality that Liverpool have. Even Everton, yeah, sure, they might set up in a really deep, compact block, but I've seen they're not exactly the best deep block to ever grace the game, right? And I think it's very fair. A good one, oh yeah, absolutely a good one. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be considering it. But the best one ever, no. And if those pockets of space become available, if they start to get pulled a little bit, if Liverpool start to get going and start to really start to dismantle that block, that could be a huge issue. And they could score quite a few goals, right? Because this Liverpool side have it in them. Yeah, sure, their 8 profiles probably aren't the most brilliant for breaking down deeper blocks, but nonetheless, within the team, they've still got the dynamics in which to do so. And the big thing about the Everton game, I think if Everton have a good first 10, 15 minutes, that'll be brilliant for them. Similar to like how United did against Liverpool. They weathered the storm. It was slightly different start. They weathered the storm, and then the crowd went very flat. If Everton can maybe weather the storm and then make the crowd go up because they're at home, I think that could work wonderfully well. I also think they'll employ the same approach of like a deep 5-4-1 off the ball, And Liverpool obviously had their struggles with that against Man United, so probably do against Everton to some extent, at least. Right? And I'm focusing on the right side. I'll come to the left side in a little bit, although we did discuss it more so earlier. Liverpool versus Wolves. Not a slam dunk, because like I said, you have to respect the quality in the league. There is so much. But it's a really good fixture. And you can see them relatively safely putting up a 9, 10, 11 points for Arne Slot. And then Villa-Liverpool. I just think if Villa are fairly well rested and Onana's back, I really like Emery's solutions in these bigger games. He's obviously got a point against Arsenal away at the Emirates. I thought they were decent. I thought against Manchester City, I love the solution. So in these bigger games, he has solutions. And I'm sure he'll have something at least for Liverpool. And you also have to remember, like, when Villa were blocking low and giving the opposition such small space between the lines, look at the players they have as opposed to just like the tactical concepts and the structures. Onana, Kamara. Think about how influential Tielemans was higher up in that City game. You've got the carriers like Rodgers to hurt in transition. You've obviously got strikers like Watkins who are so dangerous in a multitude of situations. So that game is open to interpretation, but that game will also be more open than the Everton one. And you know that Liverpool certainly have the quality to deliver. So I thought I'd just do a bit of football analysis just to share my thoughts. As expressed in everything you need to know, the widest range, I would say, for Liverpool assets maybe we've ever seen. They could blank both games and lose both games. Wouldn't be that surprised. They could win both games 5-0. And again, I honestly wouldn't be that surprised. Albeit 5-0 is a bit of a stretch. So yeah, I thought it was just relevant for me to do a little bit of analysis there and not completely dismiss their prospects if it appeared like I was doing that earlier, because naturally they're the best team in the country. So I have a lot of respect for that. Now I'm aware that I've said the word respect many a time in this video. I'm not quite sure why, because I've never really used it before on this channel in relation to describing players and teams. I basically just wanted to tell you that I really dislike the idea of selling Cody Gakpo for all the reasons discussed in the video. Now, do I need to go over it again? Probably not. You've probably heard it. But very briefly, Wolves at home, wonderful fixture for him. He's got a double-double. If you go into slot, it's used for free transfers because you'd have to sell him to facilitate the move in the first place. And the thing about going on his slot is you want your team to win, right? If you're going there. Well, someone's got to put the ball in the back of the net then. And he's got a higher chance than most. So Arne Slot's ceiling is really capped to we'll call it like 10 points, roughly, realistic ceiling for a game. But Gakpo can surpass that. Just look at what he did against Ipswich, right? So for me, I don't like it at all. I don't like it. I will have a read of the slide as well, especially the last paragraph, especially the first line, because you can. But yeah, for me, no. And then hits. Early in the video, I discussed maybe making some of your projections of your own, and I would recommend doing that to see that if that extra 4 points that you're going to lose resulting from the hit, or the 8 points or the 12 points, is worth it as an investment. This is just purely an investment. As you see with my plan in Game Week 25, that 4 points into Watkins is just an investment. I could just not get him and keep Wissa, but I think he could potentially outscore Wissa by 4 points or more for the entire period that I was going to own the two. So I'm happy to make it. And yeah, sure, it doesn't look particularly attractive losing 4 points like that, but if it's going to pay off for you in the long term, or even in the immediate term, it might, do it, right? Yeah, sure, it may appear a bit more risky, but when you actually set it out, it might actually be riskier not to take the hit. So I would project for your own team in certain situations how you see certain outcomes going, and then be more open to hits at the moment, because a lot of us don't have free transfers. And we've kind of had this sprung on us, but it's not really our fault that we don't have loads of free transfers able to maximize this situation. And if you have to use hits with the upside of the assistant managership and plays in double game weeks in general, hits have never been more optimal. It wouldn't be a Friday video, because I'm not sure what I'm going to call this video, if it's going to be tied to solving your problems, without mentioning dilemmas. So just a very quick little bit on that. It's very difficult to bench Morgan Rodgers, given the quality of player, and given he obviously scored a hat-trick midweek. I think if you were going to bench him initially and now feel like starting him, just do it. I mean, I don't love the fact that it's a Wednesday night to Saturday evening turnaround, and it's away, and it's a derby. And the fact that João Gomes is out, I actually think he'll tweak the system to make it more defensive, because he probably doesn't have a like for like replacement in terms of quality. And I don't think that's necessarily good for Rodgers. He might pack the middle more instead of having a double pivot to put 3 in the middle, which I think he should do anyway. But that's a whole other discussion, and that'll probably be worse for Rodgers, especially given he's gone back to his older role, where he has certainly been more proficient in terms of output, but impact of his performances. So yeah, in most cases I would start him, but I just wouldn't set your expectations too high personally. João Pedro. See, this is the thing. Like, in most of your positions, you probably start Rodgers. I personally, if I'm in the spot, I'm starting João Pedro, but I just quite fancy Brighton doing something at Forest. I fancy Pedro picking up those pockets. And if Forest, when they find themselves in the mid block, they're nowhere near as good as defensively as when they find themselves in that deep block. And I can imagine Pedro back at 10, picking up a pocket. He's good in these bigger games. Brighton are good in these bigger games. And he does something and scores or gets an assist or return. So for me, personally, out of him and Rodgers, I would start with João Pedro. But I think for most of you, if you don't have the view, it's far more justifiable to start Rodgers. Foden, never benching in any spot. I can see Haaland being occupied a little bit more by the centre-backs as he usually is. Foden finding a pocket, maybe just in between the lines. And then, as we know, all it requires is open that or push the ball to the left-hand side a little bit and unleash from the right-hand side with that brilliant level of ball striking. And with the form he's in, there's just no way I'm benching him. Bournemouth mid, this is one I can't really answer for you. You basically just have to figure out if you think that Bournemouth are going to do well. I quite like starting them because I think Bournemouth score. It's more probable that Bournemouth score than they don't. And with the form they're in, you wouldn't be surprised if they put a few past Liverpool. So I would start a Bournemouth mid in most cases. Would I start them over Rodgers? Now that is one really, really tough question. I'm going to say yes. Again, you won't like that. I'm going to say yes. That is playing the upside a little bit as well, but I'm going to say yes. I'm already regretting that. But you know what? I'm going to change my mind. I'm not going to give an opinion because I don't have one and I don't just want to give one for the sake of it. So I'm just not giving an opinion on Rodgers versus the Bournemouth mid. Go with your gut. That's my... Mateta doesn't ever get benched for me. Do I think he'll do well at United? Well, I wasn't impressed by certain things about Palace and their approach and their instructions of the players against Brentford. Brentford at the moment are a better team than Man United, would I say, albeit the defensive proposition that he has this time around is probably slightly more difficult given United's system. So again, very difficult, but I think in most cases, given he's Mateta, given he's on penalties, and again, given he's Mateta, I'm starting him. And then finally, Gabriel, Robinson, Munoz. If you had to start, like, the thing is, you're not going to be in a situation where you have to start all three of these, right? And you're probably not even going to be in a situation where you have to start two. I guess you just start Gabriel in most cases. He can score a goal. That's very helpful as a defender. Biggest box threat in the league, especially if Marino doesn't play. Munoz, I think it's fine to start him with his attacking threat and the fact that United's attack's not so good. Robinson, I would bench because I think Newcastle score. And that is a roundup of the benching dilemmas. One very quick note. I have decided that not just for Diamond members, but for Platinum members as well, completely free of charge, there'll be an emergency call tonight, given the complete change in landscape. So if you would like to hop in on that call, you can become a Platinum member and access that call. No sales pitch this time around. Just if you would like to access that call and potentially try the group chat out, you are getting a slightly added incentive. It will be at 11 o'clock GMT PM, of course, considering when this video is going to be out. But I thought I would just let any of you guys know in case you wanted to join. And that is all she wrote for this game week's content, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly and foremost, thank you for all of the support. The opportunity I discussed earlier in the video would not have been accessible to myself if none of you clicked on my videos and none of you supported and none of you liked and none of you subscribed or left those kind comments that you so frequently do. So again, thank you very much. Secondly, I'm aware that I rambled a little bit in that video. I'm aware that I probably didn't need to repeat a few things as many times as I did, but I would rather not miss anything out and repeat things a few more times than I need to than the other way around. That aside, we should be set up for a very, very, very interesting game week. I wish you all the best of luck. I shall, of course, be in the comments replying to as many as I possibly can. Have a wonderful weekend. Irrespective of what happens, try to enjoy it. And I shall see you on the other side for transfer plans on Sunday, where I'm sure we'll have a very interesting reaction to the events that follow on the weekend. Good luck and goodbye.